Leandro Andrade was a man whose life had followed a path familiar to many. He had served his country as a 9-year veteran of the United States Army, a commitment that speaks to a sense of duty and discipline. After his time in the military, he became a father to 3 children, taking on the responsibilities of family life. Like so many people, his story was not perfect. He had faced challenges and made mistakes in his past. His life was a collection of ordinary days, marked by the efforts to provide for his family and navigate the world. But in 1995, a series of seemingly small decisions would completely and irreversibly alter the course of his future, turning a simple man into a symbol of a justice system at a crossroads. The events that triggered this dramatic shift took place in the fall of that year. On November 4, 1995, Mr. Andrade walked into a Kmart store in Ontario, California. He picked up 5 videotapes, children's movies like and A, and put them inside his pants. He was caught by store security after he left without paying. The total value of the tapes was $84.70. It was a petty crime. The kind that happens countless times a day across the country. For most, such an act would result in a minor penalty, perhaps a fine or a short stint in county jail. But for Mr. Andrade, this was not just a simple mistake. It was an act that would be viewed through the lens of his past. Just 2 weeks after the first incident, Mr. Andrade found himself in a nearly identical situation. He entered another Kmart, this time in the nearby city of Montclair. Once again, he stole videotapes, taking 4 more movies from the store's shelves. The value of these items was even less, totaling just $68.84. When combined with the first theft, the total worth of the 9 videotapes he had stolen was approximately $153.54. He later said he was taking them for his nieces and nephews. In the grand scheme of criminal activity, the theft of about $150 in merchandise is considered minor. However, the state of California had recently passed a law that would change how such crimes were judged. The problem for Mr. Andrade was not just the videotapes. Years before these trips to Kmart, he had been convicted of more serious crimes. He had a criminal record that included 2 prior felonies, one for burglary and another for grand theft. These were not violent offenses against another person, but under California law, they were classified as serious felonies. These past convictions, long since dealt with, lingered in his file like a shadow. They were the first 2 strikes against him. He could not have known that his next mistake, no matter how small, would be counted as the third, triggering a punishment of unimaginable severity for stealing a few movies. In 1994, California had enacted a law popularly known as the 3 strikes and you're outlaw. The intention behind this legislation was to target repeat offenders, particularly those who committed violent or serious felonies, and remove them from society for a long time. The law dictated that if a person had 2 prior convictions for serious or violent felonies, a third felony conviction of any kind would automatically result in a sentence of 25 years to life in prison. It was a rigid and uncompromising rule, designed to be a powerful deterrent. It left very little room for judges to consider the specific circumstances of a case or the nature of the third crime. Because Mr. Andrade had 2 prior serious felonies on his record, his petty thefts were treated in a way that defied common sense. The prosecutors in his case had a choice. They could have charged him with 2 misdemeanor counts of petty theft, which would have likely resulted in a modest jail sentence. Instead, they chose to elevate the crimes. Under the 3 strikes law, the 2 separate thefts of videotapes were charged as 2 separate felony counts. This decision transformed the theft of $153 worth of merchandise into a 3rd strike offense. Suddenly, Mr. Andrade was no longer a petty thief. He was a career criminal in the eyes of the law, facing a mandatory life sentence. The consequences of this legal maneuvering were staggering. For the first theft of 5 videotapes, the court sentenced him to 25 years to life. For the second theft of 4 videotapes, he received another sentence of 25 years to life. The judge ordered that these 2 sentences be served consecutively, meaning one after the other. The final result was a total sentence of 50 years to life in prison. For stealing 9 videotapes, Leandro Andrade, a father and an Army veteran, was told he would likely spend the rest of his natural life behind bars. The punishment was vastly out of proportion to the crime itself. This sentence was far harsher than what many people, convicted of much more severe crimes, would receive. In California at that time, the sentences for offenses like voluntary manslaughter or rape were often significantly shorter than the 50 years Mr. Andrade was given. His case immediately highlighted the inflexible and often cruel nature of mandatory sentencing laws. The system, in its effort to be tough on crime, had created a situation where the punishment no longer fit the offense. It raised a fundamental question: does justice mean applying a rule without exception, or does it require a measure of mercy and proportionality? For Mr. Andrade, the answer was a lifetime in prison. Facing the prospect of dying in prison for a minor crime, Leandro Andrade and his lawyers decided to fight back. They argued that a sentence of 50 years to life for stealing videotapes was so extreme that it violated the Eighth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. This part of the Bill of Rights protects citizens from cruel and unusual punishments. The core of their argument was that the punishment was grossly disproportionate to the crime he had committed. After losing in the lower courts, his case eventually made its way to the highest court in the nation, the United States Supreme Court, which agreed to hear the case in 2003. The question before the 9 justices was not whether they personally thought the sentence was fair, but whether it was so outrageously unfair that it was unconstitutional. In a close 5-4 decision, the Supreme Court ruled against Mr. Andrade. The majority opinion, written by Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, stated that while the sentence was severe, it was not grossly disproportionate in a constitutional sense. The court reasoned that California's 3 strikes law was designed to deal with repeat offenders, and since Mr. Andrade was a recidivist, the state had the right to punish him not just for the videotapes, but for his entire criminal history. The ruling made it much harder to challenge long sentences in federal court. This decision was deeply divisive and drew a powerful dissenting opinion from 4 of the justices. Justice David Souter, writing for the dissenters, strongly disagreed with the majority's conclusion. He argued that the sentence was in fact a perfect example of a grossly disproportionate punishment. He compared Mr. Andrade's 50 to life sentence to sentences for far more serious crimes and concluded that it was unjustifiable. If Andrade's sentence is not grossly disproportionate, he wrote, the principle has no meaning. The dissenters believe that the Eighth Amendment must have a limit, and that sentencing a man to die in prison for 2 petty thefts had clearly crossed it. Despite the passionate dissent, the majority's decision stood. The Supreme Court upheld Mr. Andrade's sentence, affirming the state of California's power to impose such extreme punishments under its 3 strikes law. The ruling was a significant blow to criminal justice reform advocates who had hoped the court would use the case to place limits on harsh sentencing laws. It sent a clear message that states had broad authority to decide how to punish repeat offenders, even if the resulting sentences seemed staggeringly unfair. For Leandro Andrade, the legal road had come to an end, and his sentence of 50 years to life was now final. With his legal appeals exhausted, Leandro Andrade was returned to the California prison system to begin serving his sentence. The reality of his punishment was stark and unforgiving. Under the terms of his 50 to life sentence, he would not even be eligible for his first parole hearing until 2046. By that time, he would be 87 years old. The sentence was, for all practical purposes, a death sentence. He was condemned to grow old and die behind bars, not for committing a violent act that harmed another person, but for 2 desperate or foolish acts of shoplifting. His story became a powerful illustration of how a person's entire life could be erased by an unyielding and mechanical application of the law. The case of Leandro Andrade did not fade away after the Supreme Court's decision. Instead, it became a focal point in a growing national debate about justice, fairness, and the wisdom of mandatory sentencing laws. Many people, both within and outside the legal community, were shocked that the justice system could produce such a result. His story was shared in newspapers, law schools, and activist circles as a prime example of the 3 strikes law gone wrong. It forced people to ask difficult questions about the purpose of punishment. Is prison meant only to incapacitate, or should it also offer a path to rehabilitation? Is justice served when a man is locked away forever for a non-violent crime? Mr. Andrade's plight helped fuel a movement to reform California's 3 strikes law. Critics pointed out that the law was not only leading to unjust sentences, but was also incredibly expensive, costing taxpayers billions to incarcerate people for minor offenses who posed little threat to public safety. His case, along with others like it, highlighted the human cost of these policies. The image of a man sentenced to 50 years for stealing children's movies was a simple, powerful narrative that resonated with a broad audience. It demonstrated that laws created with the goal of public safety could have unintended and devastating consequences on individual lives and the principle of proportional justice. Ultimately, the story of Leandro Andrade is more than just a legal case. It is a profound human tragedy that reveals deep flaws in our system of justice. It shows how easily a person, especially one with a history of mistakes, can get caught in the gears of a legal machine that is not designed to see their humanity. His sentence forced a necessary and ongoing conversation about whether our laws reflect our values of fairness and mercy. While the courts decided his punishment was not illegal, his case continues to haunt the conscience of a nation, serving as a permanent reminder that the line between justice and cruelty can sometimes be erased by the very laws meant to uphold it.